Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel. On this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. And this night we got a lot of very interesting updates. The Ukrainian sources published a significant number of geolocated videos of their strikes, FPV drone strikes against the Russian positions in the vicinity of Kazachie Lagery, basically on the Russian side of the Dnipro River. As a result of those strikes, the Ukrainians got few ammo depots, few armored vehicles, few artillery systems, and so on. So we can say, and we see the concentration of Ukrainian fire, and we see that probably the Ukrainians are planning to launch some offensive operation or landing operation in this area with the purpose to establish the bridgehead or the foothold on the southwest of Kazachie Lagery, somewhere in this direction. If you remember, yesterday we saw the Russians published the video how they were attacking and bombing the Ukrainian positions in this area with the TOS flamethrower systems. Probably during the previous night, the Ukrainians sent some reconnaissance team who managed to establish control or the foothold on this bank of Dnipro River. Currently, the Ukrainians try to support their offensive forces with massive drone strikes, FPV drone strikes. So basically, another stage or another part of the battle for Kazachie Lagery and the bridgehead for the Russian bank of Dnipro River has started. But probably there is a very high chances that Ukrainians may use this attack as the secondary direction, because probably the Ukrainians are going to launch another direction of attack. And for example, this night the Russian sources published the video of unsuccessful attempt to land Ukrainian infantry on the Kinburn spit in this area. And as you can see, the Ukrainians managed to get as close as possible their boat to this area. Then the Ukrainians managed to land their infantry. The Russians discovered the Ukrainian positions and started bombing and shelling them. I'll remind you that during the previous 2 weeks there were a lot of attempts from the Ukrainian side to land their infantry on the Russian bank, on the Russian shore of Black Sea. We remember how the Ukrainians attacked the Russian positions in Zaliznianske port. We remember reports of the Ministry of Defense about boats with infantry that Ukrainians were trying to send in direction of Kherson. According to the Russians, all of those boats were destroyed. And today the Ukrainians probably managed to get some success in comparison with the previous operation. I'm talking about this Kinburn speed landing operation. Now we are moving further to Orekhov area, to Zaporozhye, to the Bradley Square. Today we got also a lot of very interesting updates. The Ukrainians did one big mistake during the Battle of Robotyne. For some reason, after they managed to capture or establish some control over the settlement, or after they forced the Russians to step back from this area, for some reason the Ukrainians took a small operational pause and they changed their focus, and currently they try to develop their offensive operation further in the direction of Verbova and attack in direction of Novopokrovka. And the main mistake of this tactic of this operation is that the Ukrainians haven't managed maintain their flank on the west of Robotyne. That means that the Russian positions are very close to the Ukrainian main supply road that Ukrainians used to supply and support their forces on this foothold. And from these positions the Russians have significant possibilities to attack and destroy every single unit, every single armored vehicle, every single supply truck that goes to the south in direction of Verbova and Robotyne. During the previous night we got significant number of videos how the Russians were attacking and bombing the Ukrainian forces who were using this road. The Russians were using for this purposes FPV drones, the TOS flamethrower systems. The Russians were using missiles and rockets. The Russians were using artillery systems. As a result of those attacks, significant number of forces, tanks were destroyed from the Ukrainian side just using this supply road, just using these positions. So we see that at the beginning of another stage of offensive operation in this area, the Ukrainians have a lot of problems, and until they maintain their foothold and their flanks in the vicinity of north of Robotyne, I don't think, and it's highly unlikely, they are able to develop anything interesting further to the south or in direction of Verbova. Furthermore, the Russian sources today reported that during the previous 24 hours the Ukrainians tried to attack in direction of Verbova, but as a result of artillery strikes, as a result of all types of weapons the Russians used, almost the entire brigade lost its combat capabilities. And currently, it's also impossible or highly unlikely the Ukrainians have chances to evacuate wounded soldiers. Furthermore, the Russians report that those who were wounded in the evening of the previous day became dead by the morning of the current day. Furthermore, we got some picture of the hills of the topographical map in this area, and according to the situation, we see the Ukrainians controls just the lowlands in this area, and the only hill they have managed to capture is Robotyne. Probably it will help them to develop their further steps of offensive operation, but one more time, without maintaining the flanks, this operation has no sense. Now we are moving further to the Vremivka tactical bridgehead. We received few updates, and we will discuss them probably in the evening video, because in the evening summary, because just artillery duels, nothing more. If you remember yesterday, according to the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation, the Russians reported that as a result of a missile strike, probably of Iskander, they managed to destroy the headquarters of operational tactical group Donetsk, and also the communication center of 24th Mechanized Brigade. Today we got the video of that strike. Just a second. This is a small building somewhere between the fields, and as a result of that strike, one more time, the entire headquarters of operational tactical squad group Donetsk was destroyed, including the communication center of 24th Mechanized Brigade. That strike was made by the Iskander M missile. Now we're moving to Klishchiivka, to Bakhmut Frontline. The Ukrainians have activated in this area after a few days of operational pause. You remember that during the previous 2-3 days we haven't received almost nothing from this bridgehead, and now we see significant artillery strikes against the Russian armored vehicles, Russian tanks, Russian positions. The Ukrainians started their artillery preparation before probably the next wave of attack in direction of Russian positions in Kurdyumovka, Zaryanovka, Andreevka, and Klishchiivka. These 4 settlements that Ukrainians have been trying to capture since probably the beginning of July, so even June, since the end of June, so up to it's like 4 months started of that operation, and yet the Ukrainians haven't managed to capture even a single settlement. From the other side, we see how the Russians try to attack and to reduce the Ukrainian positions on the hill 205, and basically they need to control, they need to have a hill, because currently the Russian positions are located on the lowland and it's very difficult to fight. They need to control the hill, they need to see what's going on the west from the hills, and they need to cut and establish fire control over the supply and support roads that goes to Andreevka, Klishchiivka foothold that Ukrainians currently try to capture. This morning we got more details about Ukrainian attempt to attack in direction of Zaliznianske. If you remember, during the previous few days we were discussing this situation. We got a lot of videos of the Ukrainian attacks, how the Ukrainians captured the settlement. We got a lot of videos of killed and wounded soldiers from the Russian side, a lot of videos even of attacks, and yesterday we discussed the first video how the Russians managed to destroy a few tanks, and today the Russian sources, the Russian soldiers on the ground, the forces, to be more precise, of 200th Brigade published the video of and detailed material regarding that battle. The Russians reported that there was a very fierce clashes. The Russians were repelling those attacks for 2 days, and as a result of that attack, around 80 Ukrainian soldiers were killed, around 8 armored vehicles were destroyed, and more than 8 soldiers were surrendered, so 3-8 during the battle. And as a result of that clashes, according to the Russian sources, they managed to restore control over the fields and to force the Ukrainians to step back. But currently I'm not going to change the map, because as I understand, this is not the end of the story. The Ukrainians will restart their offensive operation. They will try to probably attack more. So for now this area is contested, and we can consider this area as an area in the gray zone. Very interesting updates are coming from the Siversk bridgehead. Today the Russian sources published the video how they were bombing and attacking the Ukrainian positions in the vicinity of Bilogorovka in this area, and basically this video confirms that somehow, as a result of clashes during the previous months, the Russians were forced to step back from the only building they controlled in the industrial area, in this industrial. So as I understand, because of the fact that the Russians were bombing these trenches, that means that this building was returned by the Ukrainians as a result of some operation. But if we take a look one more time at the video, we see that this building is almost reduced to ruins and there is nothing to control. So probably the Ukrainians just destroyed it and the Russians were forced to step back, and that's it. Now we are moving to Liman-Tarskoy salient. Today we got more details, more updates regarding the clashes in the Kreminna forest. The Russians launched another artillery preparation. They started bombing and shelling the forest in the south of Dnipro and Kuzmina, which confirms from one side Ukraine control over this part, and from another side that the Russians are trying to develop their offensive operation in this direction. So we need to expect some intensifying of Russian actions into the south in direction of Siversk and Donetsk river. And probably that's it for this morning video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.